Welcome to another episode of Comedy Wham Presents with me, your host, Valerie, and sometime co-host, Miss Purrington. We bring you articles and podcasts featuring the best in Austin comedy in all its shapes and formats. Started in 2016, the podcast project brings you funny people and their stories. As a fan, I like to delve into a comic's background and motivations, and we usually take a detour along the way. Consider the interview a way for you to get to know the folks that make the Austin comedy scene one of the best in the country.
I love Austin comedy so much, and I believe in it so much, and I just feel like...
No, I mean, I don't know. I always love laughing. My dad is a great storyteller, and that's, I think, part of the influence was my father's. He's really funny, and he's a brilliant storyteller.
I'm needy. I know I'm needy, but like I need stand-up. Like I need people. Like I cannot imagine not doing this.
See, I want the audience to love me, but I don't want to be a clown for them. I want them to love me for my own, for what I'm doing on my own terms.
People think because you're on stage by yourself, you know, you can be a lone wolf, but it's not like that. You need to absolutely have the respect of your peers. And if you don't have the respect of your peers, it's going to make it real hard for you to even get a foot in the door.
Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Valerie Lopez, and I'm super excited to be here to bring you our live stream edition of Comedy Wham Presents. This is our second one. We're happy to bring this back for you. If you don't know what Comedy Wham is, ComedyWham.com is your place to go for features about Austin-based comedy, articles, album reviews, and a live Austin comedy calendar. Hey, guess what? It's starting to come back. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, all at Comedy Wham. We host online comedy showcases twice a month on Fridays on our video channels, and you can even watch archived episodes if you happen to miss the live stream. Tonight, we're going back to our roots with a slight twist. This Comedy Wham Presents interview podcast is now live streaming, giving you a chance to both watch and even participate in our one-on-one conversations. We're still a podcast, but now with video. And as a bonus for those of you who are watching live on Twitch, Facebook, or YouTube, we'll have a Q&A segment towards the end of our interview, and you can submit your questions via the chats. And finally, we are accepting donations to our Comedy Wham PayPal account if you'd like to support our very special guest. So let's get started. Tonight, I am really, really excited about our guest. I met her, and I think I have the festival wrong, but I'm just going to say it was an Out of Bounds comedy festival. It might have been the Southwest Comedy Festival a few years ago, and I have been patiently waiting for her to return to Austin so that I could ask her if I could interview her. Well, you know, things have happened, and it's just not been possible, but if you have watched her in any capacity, which she's been on our online showcase, Comedy Wham, Isolation Comedy, like 4 or 5 times. She's super bubbly, high energy. She's so easy to love as a comic and as a human being, too. What you don't get from her really nice, sweet personality is that she is a ferocious roast battler. She made it on the Comedy Central roast battle for, I think it was on the 2nd season. And she's not only an incredibly gifted comic, she hosts podcasts. I think she hosts 2, but the one that I know her the most from is the 12 Questions podcast, which, interestingly enough, for a comic, focuses on issues related to sobriety. She does do a lot of festivals. She jumps in both feet into just about anything she takes on, and I'm super, super excited for you to get to know our guest tonight. And now Comedy Wham presents our guest, Anna Valenzuela.
Hi! Oh my gosh, I'm so honored to be here. All those compliments, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. Like, I was just like, oh my gosh, especially because you've been so patient with my ADD spaz brain, and oh my gosh, I am so grateful to be here, and I'm grateful that we're finally recording this podcast because I also have wanted to do your podcast, and I also have wanted to go back to Austin. Hey, Austin, book me. Come on, you know you want it. But yeah, it's great. It's totally great. I'm glad you guys comedy is coming back in Austin. Is it coming back safely? Are people getting like?
It is coming back safely from what I can tell. So
Okay.
I think compared to the other cities in Texas, Austin has taken a very, very conservative and cautious approach. Like shows were starting to happen in San Antonio and Dallas and Houston, and Austin was not ready for it. And then we kind of got hit with a death blow with our biggest comedy club venue, Cap City Comedy Club,
R.I.P.
closing down permanently. Yeah, R.I.P. Say a blessing. So that leaves really only one small venue which hasn't opened up, but I think comics were, looking at these other cities and trying to figure out how can they do it. And the weather has started to cool off a little bit, so now we're seeing the outdoor comedy shows happen. So that's what we're seeing here in Austin. And
Nice.
I know that in LA, I didn't even mention that you're based in LA.
Yes.
Yeah. Now in LA, there's like all sorts of variety. I mean, I know the Comedy Store is doing kind of a version where the comics are performing inside, right? But then it's streaming to...
Yeah, it streams to the patio. I did, and then there's also the original room has this weird window, which always used to be so haunting because in the
that's
summertime
right.
the light would come in until like 8, and that is always weird to perform in the light for tourists that are just like, "Where's Chris Rock?" And we're like, "But we're trying to make it," like laugh. You could.
Oh my gosh, what are we hearing? I think you and I are the only ones hearing whatever we just heard.
It sounds like somebody was making a drink in a tumbler.
Yeah, I think our producer might be teetotaling right now.
I love it.
We got a bit of a late start.
This is the most, by the way, this is the kind of energy that like just happens and you just gotta go for it.
You do.
You just gotta go for it. You know what I mean? It actually feels like we're in a comedy club right now because that's what would happen.
does.
Is in a comedy club, somebody would just suddenly you would get heckled by a blender, and you're like, oh my God, or worse, listening to the kitchen staff just loudly wash dishes, just like, God damn it, I want to go home, like that. So it feels very
Feels kind of
at home. Yeah, it's all natural. That's like an additional little, you guys should have like weird comedy club sounds for people to enjoy.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah. Like maybe do a check drop, like where somebody in the middle is just like, hey, so there's 7 of us at the table right now, and one of us doesn't drink, but you got chicken nuggets, so we're just gonna talk real loudly while this person who's making $20 and has waited 72 hours to do this. Yeah, okay, sure. You get the Uber yet? Did you get it? No? All right, well, let's just make sure to get up loudly in front of the set when they arrive. Let's do that, okay? So, it feels very au naturel. I enjoy it. But yeah, so the Comedy Store has this, like, bizarre window so comics can look like fish behind the window. Yeah. And then I've judged some roast battles, and then they live stream that down to the patio. And I just did my first outdoor show in a different like venue, like an alternative venue, which is really interesting because the club comics now need to rely on the alternative venues. And it's really fascinating to watch like seasoned road dogs who are used to like the club environment deal with the chaos of an outdoor show next to a freeway, like they just can't, it's very fascinating because, as a woman who started in her, early 30s, and, leveled up relatively quickly, not to like toot my own horn, but like at 2 years, I got a break and it's hard to convince club owners that I'm like a successful feature act, And that's really what I want to do. I want to feature, and I don't want to skip the line. I want to do what I need to do to get better. But it's been difficult to convince them for that opportunity. So it's fascinating now that more shows are outdoors and there's that chaotic environment that's been very much my domain for the last few years, to watch these seasoned comics kind of struggle with the spontaneity of it and the strangeness of it and the disappearance of laughter. And, how do you engage people that are 6 to 7 feet apart? So it's a very fascinating time in comedy. They will write books about this.
For sure.
Yeah,
For sure.
It's very odd.
Well, I do want to get to the whole what has been happening during the pandemic and the shutdown, but actually, this podcast has an icebreaker question to kick everything off. And so I want to go back to that, and then we'll kind of.
I love an icebreaker. I love it.
Okay, so here is the challenge for you. One word to describe your past.
Oh, my past. Anxiety.
Okay.
There was
on brand.
I wanted to say, because I'm taking this level 2 brush up class right now, and the teacher called me a rascal, which is very I was like, oh, that is my Twitter bio now. I am a rascal. I'm officially a rascal. And but a lot of that is driven by a lot of anxiety and self-doubt, and it took a lot of work to get to a place where I could have a dream. And I was really surprised to find out that dream was comedy. Mm-hmm. And so, so my past self, definitely anxiety.
Yeah. So are you from LA?
No. I'm from a town in Northern California that actually really reminds me of Texas. Huh. It's called Ione, and it was originally named Bedbug, to give you an idea of what kind of joint this is, right? So it's this mining town in this little place called Amador County, 2 places no human has ever heard of. And it's in Northern California, just about 20 minutes from the snow line. I was very close to Donner Lake, where the Donner Party died. That's very, to give you the topography of it all. It's a very mountainous place, and there's a haunted castle there, and Merle Haggard went to one of the prisons there. So there's, how I say it in the bit is there's 2 prisons, a bar, and just premium quality racism, just artisanal straight from the source, what happens when you leave white folks by themselves. And so me and my dad were the diversity. But my dad was from Boyle Heights, California. And El Sereno, Boyle Heights, Highland Park, that whole East LA, East Hollywood area. And so we would come down here periodically throughout my childhood, and I have a lot of love for LA and a lot of LA history. And I've been here since 2005, and I caused an accident that completely stopped the freeway, so I'm officially an Angelino. That's how you're an Angelino, when you're causing a sig alert, when you're just okay, I command all of your commutes. So, so I've been here for a minute, and but I'm a country girl at heart. I loved going to Texas. I went down to Texas for a 12-step convention, and I saw, no kidding, George Carlin was the headlining comedian.
Wow.
Yeah, and he got booed. People didn't like him. Yeah, because they were just old fuddy-duddies who were do the weatherman! So it was very funny, and I just knew this is so important. This is so important for me to watch because I love him so much. And afterwards, because it was in San Antonio, so we just drove around the outskirts to every big ball of yarn, a bunch of caves. We went to a cave, and then we found the snake farm. And
I know all of these things.
Yeah, what I love about Texas is if you talk to anybody for a 5 minutes and just really genuinely talk to them and like make eye contact, which people in the city don't do. But again, I'm a country mouse, right? So if you start talking country mouse to anybody in Texas, they'll invite you in the kitchen and tell you how the tea is made. I was at the snake farm. They handed me a baby lemur to hold. I'm holding a baby lemur, you know, like it was just very like they were giving us the real tea about like the behavior of the animals. And so I just absolutely love Texas. I love the vibe. I love the hominess of it all. When I was Out of Bounds, and that was my very first festival. And I kind of didn't like know how to festival. Like I didn't know that like there's all these mixers you should go to, and like I just wanted to kind of explore and eat barbecue on my own. And and I was just like kind of wandering around doing a bunch of things, and I would really wear myself out before going on stage. I would like go on stage and be like, okay, I'm doing my set, you know, and it was just very, there's if you're a comedian and you're listening to this or watching this, there is a rhythm to festivals. So like you want to make sure that what most people do is they party all night and they get like no sleep, and then they just look haggard all the time. I can't do that because I don't party, so I have to like get some sleep, and I have to make sure that I don't walk around doing sightseeing for 8 hours before my set.
Yeah.
But it was so lovely meeting you because I feel like every scene has a person like you who's just a delight and just who loves comedy and gets to know everybody. And it's like I find a you in every city. And I remember texting the you here in LA, who is a friend of mine, saying I found the Texas you. And she was like, that's amazing. And when I'm in Northern California, I find that person because I was a fan for so long. Like I love comedy, and I love I love it. It's anxiety producing. A lot of comedians are like very challenging people, myself included, like I'm not perfect. Clearly today demonstrates a lack of perfection on my part. But I'm very, I'm just so grateful to be on stage and to be me and to just do it and explore it. It's very cool to me.
So we're going to explore some of the themes of your background as a Latina woman.
Sure.
And because I have also the Hispanic surname, I know what my Hispanic family is like. And it's all laughs, and it's all cattiness, and it's all ball busting.
Yes.
So may I make a similar assumption about your family?
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, like it's so weird. I call myself, both jokingly and seriously, like I'm the nexus of what cultural erasure really is, because I don't speak the language. Like I am learning. I'm on Duolingo. I was talking to the dog in Spanish. I was feeling very into myself, right? And my dad was really trying to, because I grew up in a town that had no diversity, right? So my dad was just trying to get me to assimilate. He didn't even speak Spanish in front of me. But when I would visit my Latino family in LA, it would be like, why is she in jeans? Like what? Like, why is she looks like a little boy. And it's like, because this is what you wear when you climb trees all day. Like, this is, what do you mean? I'm a kid. Like, or, definitely there's my cousins at one point, even when I was a kid, like beat me up real bad. And because I had like 5 cousins, Jessica, Erica, Veronica, and Angelica. They were all named after soap opera characters.
Of course.
Right? And so like they or novellas, probably both. And so they would see this very whitewashed version of me walk in the door, and suddenly everybody would start speaking Spanish, and I'd be like, what's going on, and so it was very isolating. And then one time they let me have it, man. And I went to, my parents were like full on, they had real long nails, and my parents cut my nails really short because I'm running around in the dirt, and you don't want to get ringworm or God knows what else, out there in a farm. And so I had like, I just had a very different appearance. So I never really felt included. I got to meet my Grammy. She only like cursed at my cat in Spanish all the time. Like they were very whimsical people, but my dad was really like my cultural touch point. Like my dad did bus balls all the time. He lied to me for like, why do Latino parents do that? They're like, oh, we're going to lie to you. Yeah. Oh, you believe that? Oh, you're stupid. Well, I guess you're gullible, huh? Okay, you got to live with that now. Like, and like, that's the sort of enculturation to like toughen you up because this is a world that will deceive you, right? And so it was that cultural touchstone. And then he got very sick when I was about 12. And he got sick with this very, it's a Parkinson's type illness. I say Parkinson's on stage because it's hard to get into. Like, he died of an illness related to Parkinson's that like 700 people die of a year. It's in the same family of illnesses that Robin Williams discovered that he had. And it's devastating, right? And in that time, he suddenly became like Chicano, like real Chicano, like suddenly he became this cultural attaché and like really went out of his way to like wear a lot of clothes that indicated, his Chicano-ness. There was this like version of Cross Colors that came out in the 90s called Majado Brothers, and he would wear those shirts all over the place, and he just became very into his, listening to a lot more Spanish language music and really became into being Latino. And I remember being like, oh, now we're Mexican? Like, what's happening? Like, what do you... Because he would tell me, like, I would paint my nails black because I like punk music. And he'd be like, oh, what are you, a chola now? Is that what you're doing? You're a chola? Okay. All right. You chose that. Took your eyebrows off because kids at school were making fun of you? Okay. Yeah, it was some chola shit. Okay, cool. So, and he still taught me, like, I was trying to explain to my roommate, like, how good I am at ironing, and that is, like, a Latino thing. Like, you just know, like, you don't leave the world, you don't go outside looking raggedy, like, you got white people, you gotta show up, you gotta stunt on, because they already don't think that you're very smart, or you're very educated, so you gotta come out there looking clean, and acting right. And my dad suddenly, again, he sort of embraced it. And I wish he had done it earlier. I wish I had my language. I wish I had more of a cultural connection, but I'm getting it now, especially in quarantine. I've been really like my roommate didn't know who Dolores Huerta was. And I was like, oh, sit down, Miss Marilyn. Let's have a talk. Like, this is a civil rights activist that was active, like, but at the beginnings, even before the Black Panther Party, this woman was busting balls in California and making legislation, like, and she's still alive, and like, wow. She survived, and like, kind of bringing that, but like, I don't know if it was as bad. I mean, I assume you grew up with like, did you grow up with like, because kids would call me like a wetback or a beaner, or ask me like, yeah. Does your dad pick tomatoes? And I'm like, okay, first off, my dad is your dad's boss, so hold on.
Yeah, it wasn't quite the same. My advantage in the small town is I'm a mix. So my mom is super white, European.
Same. Big tall white mom. They love it. It's those big chichis, man. They're just like flat butts, huge chichis. They're living the dream. They're gentrifying the gentrifiers is what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I inherited her skin tone, not my dad. So it was easy enough for me to blend in. And I had the distinct advantage that all of the kids that might otherwise bully and taunt me, they needed my help to get good grades. So I became, they're into getting decent grades. So,
nice.
I was somewhat protected.
Good for you.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, they're certainly in elementary, because when my hair started growing on my legs, and I had no idea.
Yeah.
I had my dad's Hispanic, thick, dark hair on my legs, and I got teased mercilessly, and I didn't understand, anything. So it's kind of like, oh, what? Oh, this is the burden of the Hispanic.
Yeah, nobody tells you that. Like, here's what happens: like little Latino children, they grow up, and you can see it in pictures of me. They're like, they're skinny, then they get squishy, then they get skinny, then they get squishy, and like square squishy, you know, SpongeBob SquarePants bod, you know what I mean? Just like stout. And then one day you wake up and you have size D boobs out of the blue. Just no question, just chi-chis out the gate and hair everywhere. Just your eyebrows are growing around down your back, and you got mustaches and arm hair. And I gotta tell you, up until my 30s, I shaved my arm hair, and I was like,
I went through that. Yeah,
it's such a weird thing. I loved it. It was not a great show, but ABC had this show called The Fosters, and in one season, did you dye your hair blonde? Did you ever dye your hair blonde?
No,
I did. No. I did not all the way. I just in the front, you know, because it was the 90s, right? And so, first off, this skin color you look jaundice in blonde. I looked raggedy, and so a character in The Fosters dyes her hair all the way blonde, and she's like a foster child who's, you know, she has a white mom and a black mom, and she's Latino, and I totally got that story arc. It seemed almost like a weird addition that somebody in the writer's room, like the one brown person in the writer's room, was like, make her dye her hair. It was like, trust me, we all do it. You know, so, but that, you know, that assimilation is so much. You know, I think the real crime of assimilation for us as a culture is it doesn't work. We think it works. We're told it works. And it worked, you know, when like the Aztec, you know, in the Florentine Codex, the Aztec were recording both in Spanish and I cannot say the Aztec language. But they were recording in the Aztec language what really happened. And nobody could read it until recently. And so now there's this entire document where it was like we were really good at hiding within the colonized culture. But what's happening in 2020 is there's no hiding anymore. There's just no hiding anymore. It's, you know, it's really become this thing where and it drives me crazy when, like, I get that we all have that cousin, that Trump cousin. All brown people have that. You got that Trump cousin, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do too. I do too. And it's like trying to explain to him, like, no, like, in the eyes of the people making these rules and making these decisions, you're not an equal. I don't care how far Ted Cruz gets in the world. People see him as vampire first, not Latino. So, like, it's this whole weird dichotomy of, like, you know, well, we're the best minority. It's like, no, have you met Asian people? They're crushing the model minority game. We are fair to middling in the model minority game, you know? So it's such a crime, but like, again, just really digging into the history and, you know, did you build an ofrenda this year?
A what? No.
Oh, no. A Day of the Dead ofrenda.
Oh, okay. No.
Yeah, like an altar. It's really nice. It feels good. Like, we went down to Olivera Street and got all the little knickknacks and all the things you could get. And I've been doing it for a couple years now. So it was like my roommate, she's like white lady. So she had to like dig it all up. And I'm like, my side's all up. I'm like, I got the relatives separated. So the ones that don't like each other aren't near each other, you know, like. So yeah, it's just doing those little cultural things, especially because I'm rambling. You asked me one question. I'm going to take up this whole podcast.
I know. No, I have so many questions.
When you interview a podcaster, this is what happens. And I will say this and shut up and let you ask your questions. Okay. I promise. But ofrenda. Okay. When I got into comedy, I didn't think of myself as a Latino comic, right? Yeah. But there was a moment where a producer's looking at me and says, is it okay if we bring you out to mariachi music? And I was like, oh, I mean, we're not that kind of like brown. Me and this other brown person you're bringing out to mariachi music. We're like oldies brown. You know what I mean? Like we're like the Four Tops brown. You know, you don't want, we're lowrider brown. That's different kind of brown. Okay. And they were like, but we think it would be like really great. And then both of us, without skipping a beat, agreed. And I was like, Anna, you could have done better. You could have done better. You could have stood up for yourself. You could have said, this is not authentic. And not all of us are from mariachi Latino. Like, I've visited the Raider Nation more than I've visited Mexico. Okay. Like, so it's so funny to me. It's so funny to me. It's such a weird world. So I just started to, in my comedy, lean into it, embrace it. You know, I'd be traveling through Arizona and I'd be talking about something and somebody would just yell, "Make America Great Again" at me. And like, what I realized is, with this skin, this Aztec princess nose, and all this hair, when I go out on stage, I pick up a microphone. It's a political statement no matter what. So just lean into it. Yeah, I'm brown. Yeah. That's it. You know, and I'm going to defy what you think that is, but it's still a part of my act. I have to talk about it because everyone sees it except for me. I'm just like, I feel like Karen-ass Karen on the inside sometimes.
Yeah. I get that. For myself, not for you.
Well, I mean, same. Yeah. Game recognized game.
You have mentioned, and I've read that you did get a later start, which getting a start in your 30s to me, because I got a late start, a different decade. What was your inspiration? What motivated you? I know I've read the story, so it's kind of a cool story. Will you share with us why it was that you decided, I'm going to try to be a comic now?
Yeah, it was a really weird moment. So I grew up, my mom loved stand-up. She would listen to everything from George Carlin to like the Blue Collar Comedy Tour. And by the way, if you're a comedian with half your salt, if you don't think You Might Be a Redneck style joke is funny, you're not funny, because that is low-key the funniest comedic device. You can get a bunch of comedians in the back and we'll do something like, if you tweet that veganism is the best, you might be woke. Like, you can do that with anything and it's the best. Like, there is, the important part is to get that if you, and then you got it. You're doing it. You're killing it. So I was working at this place. I was working at this autism center, and I had worked in drug and alcohol treatment for years, and I was really loving the transition into working with special needs. And they asked me one day, "Do you have your master's degree?" And I was like, "Oh no, I got a GED, School of Hard Knocks. I know how to do this job because I know how to do this job." And they were like, "Okay, you and 19 other people got to go." And so it's the first of the layoffs. And my friend, who is the you of California, she was like, we were talking about liking comedy one day on the little 12-step road trip. And she was, you know, when you ask somebody like, "Do you like comedy?" And then you're like, what does this mean to them? Because they might like trash. And so you don't know what conversation you're getting into. But our charts aligned. We liked all the same things. And she bought tickets, because her husband wouldn't go with her, to every single patent at the Largo, preparing for his album.
Wow.
And so we got to watch The Master craft an hour. We got to watch him put two jokes together that didn't work. He put the Doc McStuffins bit next to the porn pitch bit, and people could not do both. They were stuck on porno, and he's like, "I'm talking about a children's show." He was like, "Fuck it, we're moving on to the next one." So just to kind of watch the structure of a set, it was like a master class. And we started to, and I was super depressed. So she just kept buying all these comedy tickets. I was working under the table, making memes for 12-step things, just deeply sad, deeply sad. And so we kept going to comedy clubs. We go to, first we only went to alternative venues, and then we went to the Comedy Store, and then we started to kind of check out other venues and go different places. And I was at the Comedy Store one night, and there was this guy who went up at about 1 a.m., right? That's the witching hour. That's when there's two types of comics that go up between 12:45 and 2, and that is brand new past, so just baby in the paid regular realm, or people that were past 100 years ago that maybe aren't top bill, right? And maybe are a little abrasive, right? And so this guy goes up and he does this bit, and I think it's brilliant. It's so well written. I really enjoy it. And I was walking out, because the way the Comedy Store is, if for the Texas listeners, it's this pin in the middle. It used to be a medical building, and it has this pin in front of it that is this like black tile pin where comics and regular folk and celebrities like all mingle. Like there's not a lot of VIP seating in this incredibly old building that was around since like, you know, Prohibition days, where they used to like sneak booze in it. Like, so there's just not a lot of that seating. And so I happened to walk past that comic and I was like, hey man, great set. And he said, are you a comedian? And I said, no. And he goes, well, you're a comedian. And I go, no, I'm not a comedian. And he goes, only comedians think I'm funny. You're a comedian. And I was like, well, I think you're funny and I'm not a comedian. And he was like, yeah, you are. Hey, Jay Light, come here. Can you tell Anna about potluck? And I'm not going to lie to you. I thought there was honestly a potluck. I'm like, finally, a show where there's food. Like, I was very excited. And but once I researched it, I realized, well, you don't just like go to potluck. That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Although a lot of people do. And so I go back home. We're living in Long Beach at the time, and I'm at the grocery store, and somebody says, hey, didn't I see you on TV? And I was like, excuse me? She's like, are you a comedian? I'm like, no. And I'm like in my office and I'm listening to stand up while I make these sad memes, and my boss pings me and he was like, hey, you like laugh randomly in a very quiet office, maybe like tone it down because your laugh is crazy. And I was like, oh, okay. And then he pings me, you know, it seems like you really like stand up. Have you ever thought of doing stand up? And I was like, no. And it just kept happening. People kept pushing. My own therapist was like, have you ever thought of doing stand-up? And I'm like,
oh wow.
And she goes, I have a friend who's a comedian, and I was talking to her that I have this client that's super funny and always goes to stand-up shows. Anyway, I got you the information for this class if you want to take it. Like, it was like the universe was just screaming, Anna, do this. Your job is not to check bags and take urine samples for the rest of your life. Like, go do this. And so my boss one day, he said, hey, I don't know if you know this, but there's this thing in LA called the Comedy Bureau. It has all the open mic listings. And my friend told me about it. And there's an open mic literally after work tonight, and I think you should go.
Wow.
And I said, well, I need to like write something. And he was like, well, you're done. Why don't you just write something? And like, so eventually I made it to that open mic, and I didn't do well. Thank God, by the way. When people do well their first time, I'm like, what did you do? Like, who are you? Like, I did not do well, but I kept people's attention, which was, and this open mic was in a bar called a coffee bar called the Library that also served alcohol, but that like nursing students, it was like open till 2 a.m. Nursing students were just always like hunkered down in there because there's like a nursing school in Long Beach, and they're like, I gotta do it. And the open mic would happen to them. It wasn't like...
Yeah, we have venues like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't like they were trying. It was a brutal room. In fact, after doing the Comedy Central spot, I went back to the library. And with Keith, who also came up in Long Beach, and we both ended up hosting that mic at some point. And we went there, and it was so hard. And he looked at me, and he was like, "That was humbling." I was like, "I know, it was so hard." And I went, I did it, and then I got open mic pneumonia. Everybody got. Do you guys have this in Austin, where everybody just gets sick at once?
I don't know, actually.
Comedians in LA.
I'm sure it does.
I'm gonna get real close. Comedians in LA are the grossest people. They have never washed their hands. That's why when Corona started, I was like, everybody was like, not leaving the house. I know these fools. They're gross. Literally at the Improv, a kid before Corona started, he was on the mic and he was like, I have a cold. And we all just started booing. We were like, get up, go home, eat chicken soup, you piece of shit. You're going to get us all sick. So I got really sick from the open mic. And someone messaged me, hey, you're really funny. Are you going to come back? And I was like, yeah, thank you. And I just did that. And then eventually somebody told me about another open mic nearby because I used to only go to that open mic. I was afraid to go anywhere else. And then I went to this other open mic, and the comics kind of sat me down, and they saw that I really like it, and I really wanted to do it, not half-ass it, in with both feet, head, nose, the whole thing, right? And they were like, this is what you got to do. You got to be willing to drive like 100 miles a day, going from San Diego to Ventura if you have to get to all these different mics. You got to make people think that you live in their neighborhood. You got to be there. So try to do between 2 to 4 a night. Wow. And I did it. And I had a full-time job, and there was a moment where I was hosting the mic. I was hosting that terrible mic, and somebody's playing a trumpet in a joking way, and I'm holding my phone, and I'm asleep. I have my head is up, but I'm completely asleep, and I'm waiting for my phone to buzz. And then it buzzes, I light him, and I close my eyes yet again. And the comics pulled me aside, and they were like, listen, you're going to burn yourself out. And I was like, I'm fine, And then eventually I moved. What happened was before I burned myself out, I lost that job because I was a mess. I was like, my boss would come outside. I'd be asleep in my car in the parking lot. Like I just was burning the candle at both ends. And then I ended up moving to LA, and then kind of the rest is history. It was like I started doing roast battle because my friends kind of goaded me into it, and I just what I knew about those comedians is I wanted what they had. I wanted the comedic skill that they had, and this was a thing that they used to hone it. And so I was like, well, I'll just do it for the exercise. I burst into tears about a week before doing the roast battle because I was so afraid of being mean. And then
see that's the irony. Like I had met you at Out of Bounds, and I was following everything that you were doing, and then I think I didn't realize you were a roast battler, and then I realized it, and I'm like, how? She's so sweet. She's so nice.
I will. Thank you. My sponsor will appreciate that. It was a combination of things. It's I really wanted to get good at it. I love kind of mathy jokes, and if you love a roast, what you love is the algebra of comedy. That's it. It's just equations. You're just making little equations over and over again, and I really liked that, and I liked the repetition, and I liked how I could hyper focus on it because I do have that bad ADD. Sorry. And so I liked that it sort of would consume me. And again, that comes from like being in recovery. Like I have an addictive personality, so I sort of became addicted to it at some point. And when that happened, that's when it stopped being fun.
Well, before we do that, I actually wanted to show a clip of the roast battle. If our producer can tee that up, we're just going to watch the actual battling back and forth, and we'll skip the judging part. So it'll be quick.
Keith only uses lambskin condoms because after sex he enjoys a snack.
Anna's just jealous because my body is shaped like the eggs she can no longer produce.
Just thinks I'm old because I'm 4 years past his life expectancy.
Look, I don't want to say Anna's desperate for love, but I did see her standing in front of a Home Depot wearing a wedding dress.
Keith told me he has a really big dick, which makes sense. The average blue whale penis is 8 to 10 feet.
Anna has a long face, buck teeth, and she once fucked a married man. What I'm saying is, she's a horse that caused divorce with no remorse, of course.
Last joke.
Keith's a fat bisexual. So you could fuck his neck, his back, his pussy, and his crack.
That's absolutely true. I go both ways, just like Anna's shitty tits. Now, honestly, I think Anna's just jealous because my parents get to watch the battle on TV, and hers have to watch from wherever Mexicans go instead of heaven.
That was crazy. Okay.
It was great. That was like, I haven't watched that in its entirety in forever. Oh my God.
I mean, I've seen a few of the roast battle shows. They've come through with South by and Moon Tower from time to time. And, you know, it is like it is very, I don't want to break it down to it being formulaic, but there is a formula to being as effective as possible. Mm-hmm. And I could kind of get that rhythm to there being a formula just watching that.
Yeah. Well, it was, you know, that was a particularly challenging roast battle for me because Keith was like a mentor. Like Keith, I would drive him to his shows and he would like, you know, nag the producers into putting me on and like we would talk about jokes and he was really supportive. And when we did it, and also that's edited funny. I'll tell you the real order of the jokes I told because it was bananas. When I saw it come out, I was like, "That's a completely different battle." Like I was like, "Man, editors, you really okay? Cool, all right, weird." So it was hard because I just adored him and. One thing that really bothers him is a lot of fat jokes. And usually what I do is I write sort of like, because I had worked in like psych services, I write like an MMPI. I write what I think is going on in a person's personality. Like what's their level of narcissism? What's their level of depression? Like I really write this really detailed report for myself about what I think about this person and how I can criticize them very deeply. Like in a real mean way. Lord. And I know it's for a recovering person, it's a dark place to live, but I was really enjoying it. And so I would do that and I couldn't do that for Keith because I just love him and I was a little scared to battle him. And what came out was a lot of absurdist, you know, more weight heavy jokes and, which I don't do that kind of humor in my act. I don't like make fun of, I think sizeism and racism and sexism is kind of boring. Like, and so, but doing the jokes that I did, I felt they were like silly and creative. And before the battle started, Keith was, and here's the real tea. Okay. So a battle before us, we're in the shoot and they like stagger you. And I was so nervous. Jeff Ross was like, Anna, please stop drinking Red Bull. Because I just hadn't slept in weeks. I was a wreck. And he was like, please put the Red Bull down. When a man who the inside of his body is just weed says, put that down, that's too much, right? Yeah. And so we're sitting there and I'm just trying to calm my nerves and they staged us. So we would be like in these little pairs all throughout the Comedy Store. And then they would move us in a factory line up to the taping. And we're in the shoot to go out next. And the battle before us is bombing. I mean, bombing. I mean, one battler came with jokes and the other battler came with, I don't know. But it was a bomb. And we were like, looking at each other with terror. We were just like, what do we do? And so we got out there and Keith, in a stroke of genius with the judges, made fun of me for 5 minutes before the battle even started. Oh. And I'm kind of going back and forth and I'm smiling with my professional makeup on, you know, like I'm just like smiling, you know. And he had been talking about my age for a really long time, which I knew that was the direction the battle was going to go in. So I kind of had to, the thing with Keith is you got to be a strategist. Because if you're like a white dude who's like well-dressed, he's probably going to call you gay or the slur around that, right? So if you're a woman, you know, then it breaks down to age, weight, and sexual activity, right? So you got to kind of be a strategist with him. You got to know where to kneecap him so he doesn't come for you too hard. And so before the battle started, or first joke, it popped into my head to say, well, Keith's just jealous because I'm going to live, I'm already 5 years past his life expectancy. And the room went bonkers. And I realized that my opening joke was not as strong as that rebuttal. And I said, okay, your turn. Because I was just like, well, and so to open on a rebuttal is a really strategically insane thing to do. And that's kind of why the room just went like, after that, because even the battlers hadn't seen it. And so it was kind of, I know I'm sounding like I'm jerking myself off here, but it was true. It happened. And so that's what happened. And then the jokes were a little different in the order for both of us, actually. And it was really interesting. And then kind of miraculously, and I think mostly just to kind of justify, because TV is arbitrary and really it doesn't matter who wins a roast battle, but very miraculously I won. And there was suddenly this tension in the air because people thought that if you didn't win the pre-show, because that's Road to Roast Battle, so they're doing the show kind of saying like, this is how our battlers got here. So like they couldn't, people thought if you didn't win your Road to battle, you wouldn't make it onto the main show, which turned out not to be true, by the way. Okay. You just had to be funny. You just had to be funny and into it. And we were also entrenched and really under the mistaken belief that that entertainment in some respect could be a meritocracy. And the truth is it's not. It's completely arbitrary. In reality, they know who's going to win before you go out on stage, and that show is a reality show at its core. So they know what's going on. So it was a very fascinating thing to go through, because suddenly people that had really been my cheerleaders and really been like my little brothers or my big brothers, like my big comedy brothers, but my little life brothers, Yeah. And like suddenly the vibe got very competitive, and I was also very sick at the time. I was also very sick. I had a problem with my uterus, and I was bleeding like buckets. And so I was anemic and was having trouble remembering things and emotionally self-regulating. But you could have cut one of my titties off and I would have went on stage. By the time we did the full roast battle show, I was wearing adult diapers under my dress. So it was like, that's how bad it was. And so, it was an interesting thing, because then all my friends went off to write for television, and my job full time became haranguing Medi-Cal to give me surgery to fix my uterus. I was just like, like they would call me and be like, so yeah, I got this writing gig. It's like super stressful. And I'm like, I bled so much I had to go to the ER, and everything in my mouth tastes like nickels, like, and so it was just a really weird and interesting time, but I'm so grateful for it. So grateful for the experience. Yeah. And shortly after that, I did like 2 more roast battles in the belly room, because they were trying to figure out who was going to be on season 3. And then I just tapped out. I just couldn't. It was the stress of what was going on in my personal life. Sure. Plus the strain on my comedy mentor friendships and all of that. It just became too much. And, like a good addict, you're sick and tired of being sick and tired. That's what we say a lot. And that's how I felt. I was like, I'm sick and tired of being like stressed and insulted. Like, like
I couldn't do it. I know that I couldn't do it. And I can't be mean. I mean, I can be mean in some narrow circumstances, but I couldn't be mean in a roast. I couldn't do it. As much as I personally love math and trying to figure out that formula, I know I couldn't be mean to somebody.
You can't. Here's why. Because people, this is what I learned, is it's actually, I'm myself, like, I adore you. You're a delight. I hate the little diva move I accidentally pulled earlier. I will beat up on myself for 4 days. Like I hate it. But the thing about a person who chooses to be kind in their interactions and is mindful of that is there is a part of their brain that they are acting against. And that part of their brain is where the roast lives. That part of their brain is the part going like, I'm going to be nice to you, but I just want you to know you cross-eyed as fuck. And I will not take this indignancy from somebody looking in 3 directions. Now fuck off. You know what I mean? Like, there is a part of your brain that's super feisty, and also being Latino, it's like, the greatest compliment I ever got after doing the show is I was at a 12-step meeting. This old cholo kind of waddles up to me, right? He comes up to me. His name's Tomas, right? He comes up. He was like, hey, I was watching TV last night. I saw you playing the dozens. And I was like, which is prison speak for roasting. And I was like, yeah, man, I got to do a TV show last year. That's why I was so stressed out. And he goes, you did good. But when that motherfucker called you ugly, I thought, where is he? Where is he? I'm going to take him. And I was just like, that to me was the most, like, it felt like the most cool, like, validation. My father's passed away, so that's the validation that, like, that's so great. Or I was performing up in Modesto, California, which is Northern California, but it's a predominantly Latino neighborhood, and people really treat it like it's like ghetto, but that's not true. Like, saying ghetto is just saying there's just people that aren't white there, you know, calm down. So I got off stage, and this old man comes again, but he's more like Paisa Tejano, like, you know, white boots, the whole nine. And he comes up to me and he goes, you know why you're funny? And I go, why? And he goes, you're one of us. And just walked away. And I was like, like, oh, take that. I wanted to be like, can I like call Comedy Central and have them tell you that? Because, oh my God, like, it felt really good. So yeah, it was a big moment. It was a lot of fun. And hey, Cat Butt, you could totally, I love a cat cast. I'm very into it. I'm surprised my cat isn't screaming bloody murder at me.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could totally do it. You just have to confront the part of yourself that wants to.
Yeah.
But don't do anything that doesn't bring you joy in comedy too. Right. It's like, when it becomes a fucking job, it's not fun anymore. Like, when it was just all our friends just shooting the shit and having fun. There was also a thing that happened at the Comedy Store where they had, after the show aired on television, everybody wanted to be on it, and somebody signed up to be on it, and they missed their spot, and then they reported it to the health board, because we used to take an 86 occupancy room and cram like 150, 200 people in that thing. And so it really did feel like a rap battle. It felt like something illegal. And like, you couldn't even clap your hands. Like, if a joke was really good, the comics would bang the wall. And like yell, and that informed the audience, which is maybe not the brightest. They informed this very angry, mean, dumb audience what was a clever joke, because otherwise sometimes they couldn't compute. They were just so in the serotonin of hate speech that they wouldn't know what was funny. So we had to tell them, and when that couldn't happen anymore, the tone of it changed in the room in a very dramatic way. Then it just really felt like hate speech just living by itself. But it's still really fun, and I love it, and I love watching it. I love judging it. And I love being I love being constructive and trying to give people the love that was given to me. Like, I love it.
Yeah. You have touched on something that is on my list of things. There's basically, there's three more things that I want us to cover.
Do it, and I will be brief.
This is not supposed to be a 2-hour podcast. If you could see, this is not my cat's normal behavior to be up on top of a shelf. This is her demanding that things need to
She's
happen.
Hungry.
She's hungry. Yeah,
she's hungry.
She is cueing me, even if our producer is.
I'm sorry, Valerie.
That's okay. Okay, you have talked about sobriety, and you host a podcast called 12 Questions that focuses on sobriety. I grew up in a household where my dad was an alcoholic, and it was something that was very present, and that is my experience with it. And because of him, I recognized in myself addictive tendencies. So I've actually not been a drinker. I will drink every once in a while, but I consider myself largely sober, and I can't even think of when the last time I had a drink. So I kind of understand, and also because I am that motherly type to the Austin comics, I worry about the amount of drinking and sorry to sound really grandmotherly here, the drugging that will happen, because it's, sure, if you're in your 20s, you're going through this and you're drinking, you're taking drugs, yay, party. But at some point, you have to live with who you are and learn who you are in order to navigate the rest of your years.
Yeah.
And yet, as that nice person, I can't, in good conscience, tell somebody, stop doing this, stop destroying yourself. Sometimes I get really close. But, so that is my perspective on sobriety and drinking and the impact that it can have on people. I know that the 12 steps and AA's the secret society, and they, you're not supposed to talk about it, but you can use coded language, I think. What was it that gives you the comfort to talk so openly about sobriety, and also what made you start the podcast?
Okay. Humor in a 12-step setting is the cheat code to connection. And I figured out while sharing at conventions or sharing in meetings that I was kind of funny. And it was my coping mechanism for uncomfortable feelings. It still is, still is. And I'm comfortable with it because, like you, I grew up in an addict household, and I grew up in a 12-step program with my dad. And it's my earliest memories were going to meetings with him back when the 80s, when you could smoke inside and all of that. And I would just lay on the floor where the good air was. And just, so it's very much a part of who I am and my identity. It's just been my whole life. And I got clean when I was 20. And so when I first started doing stand-up, I had a lot of jokes about being clean my whole life and what that looked like. And, because I had done a lot of drinking and drugs before I got there. That to me is really boring. The third eye has been open. I did acid and watched Hail Bop crawl across an Arizona sky. I'm good, And so when I started doing stand up, it very much became a topic. And how the podcast happened, very interesting. I was at the Comedy Store. Same guy I complimented who called me out for being a comic, always checks on me, calls me all the time. He's like, "Hey, how you doing? I just want to check on you." He reads my scripts and, and checks my packets for me. Very sweet. And I call him the best, worst person in the world because he's a scoundrel. And, I asked him, I said, how do you, because what was happening, and I'm sure this has happened to you, is you go to an open mic and comedians or show, and comedians know that you can listen. And so they just barf their emotional trauma just into your mouth, just like, blah, blah, blah. Like they don't understand that just because somebody takes legitimate interest in you does not mean you burden them with all of your problems, right? Mm-hmm. So I was getting really emotionally drained at shows because people would just be like, "I want to bring my personality disorder into your sphere," and I'd be like, "Okay." And so I went to the Comedy Store and I was like, "Hey, how do you avoid these people just sucking up all your energy?" And he said, "Well, you can walk away from any conversation you don't want to be in anymore. I do it all the time." He said, "But that means you have very good interviewing skills and you should start a podcast." And then he turned to another comic and said, "Hey, Anna's going to start a podcast." And so he did something my dad would do, which is do it, chicken, do it, or you're going to embarrass yourself. And so he said, "Anna's going to start a podcast." I said, "He just decided that for me. Don't listen to him." And he goes, "Oh, you really should." He goes, "You know what? You're a 12-step person. You should call it 12 questions and ask people 12 questions about their lives." And then he just walked away. And again, it's like when the universe puts something in your lap, just accept it. Just accept it. Just explore it. If it's not for you, you don't have to do it. I've started and stopped that podcast now 3 times. And, because it got overwhelming. But what it turned out to be is a positive outlet, especially during the roast battle times. It turned out to be this positive outlet where I could talk about things that matter to me and, talk about real human experience with people and get to know these comedians in a way that feels genuine and is not in a competitive environment. And one thing that you said about wanting to take the kids and tell them don't do this, the thing is they're not going to listen. Comedians don't even brush their fucking teeth. Like that's why they're all missing teeth, because they don't brush or floss. Yeah. They can't even. I used to show up at open mics and they started calling me mom because I would have my snacks from work and they would be like, "Hey, you got any food?" And I'd be like, "Have you eaten today?" And they'd be like, "Yeah." I'd be like, "Cigarettes aren't food, bro. Like, you got to eat you can't just go to 7-Eleven and live on a chili dog for 24 hours. It's going to kill you." And so, like, I'd have, like, fruit. And, like, because I was like, you're all going to get scurvy. And but the problem with that is that's how I should be taking care of me and taking care of my comedy and my career and keep it to, like, my close friends and the people that feed, that put that energy back in. And at the time, a lot of people did, but you can't do it with everybody or you'll just fall down. They'll just suck all the energy right out of your body. It's like that. It's like what we do in the shadows, the Colin Robinson energy vampire. They'll just come up and just be like, and take
I love that reference.
Everything. And that's really become like a thing when my boyfriend and I, who's also a comedian, when somebody really like lands on me and really starts doing that, he'll look at me and he'll go, and I'll laugh. And I'll just be like, "Excuse me, Stuart needs to talk to me," and I'll be like, "Get me the fuck out of this party," So yeah, it is a compliment. It is an honor for people to feel comfortable enough to share with you. But there does come a point where you're like, you should just get a therapist. But yeah.
So then shifting to, and I'm glad you made the comment about when the universe puts something in your lap, sometimes you just have to go with it. COVID happened.
Yeah.
And I had not seen you perform since that Out of Bounds festival. And we were on this madcap pace of booking 1 million shows.
And they're all great. You should all listen to them. They're great shows. They're fantastic.
They're all on the Twitch and YouTube channels. When I first approached you, I was super excited that you said yes. And then when I watched you perform, I thought, oh my God, there's been so much change and improvement since that. And I loved you at Out of Bounds, but I thought, oh, there is so much more I know.
You're filling my cup with love. Oh my God.
There was so much more polish in the pace, and it was so great, and it was so weird, of course, because it's online. Yeah. And there's 2 layers to what I want to say. Is it's just an outright compliment of how much I saw different between 2 or 3 years ago and what I saw, which was in an artificial setting online. But then also the fact that you jumped in online, and you've been doing a lot of online shows. And you referenced earlier about, seeing some of the comics the ones that were paid regulars at the store who are now trying to figure out how do they do their thing in these alt venues. And, a lot of those people that I've talked to, they wouldn't touch an online show.
I know. It's a shame.
Yeah, I mean, part of it I understood because I had talked to a manager who explained that this is their livelihood at this point, and they want to make sure that they have a source of income, and we can't guarantee that. We're donations based, but you jumped in, and you've done a lot, and it speaks to that spirit that you have of when something lands on your lap, or you jump in, or maybe it's just part of your genetic coding of resiliency. Oh my God. My therapist does not know this, but she's very happy we're having this conversation because I don't always feel that way.
here's how I feel about online shows. And first off, thank you so much. You know, between Out of Bounds and COVID, I traveled a lot and I worked a lot of clubs and I traveled around the world. I got to do comedy in Southeast Asia. I got to see how some comedy that we do here in the States does not translate. So you gotta kind of shift it for an expat audience. And it's been a very cool experience. And even in COVID, I've started taking a lot of classes that I didn't have time to take, like screenwriting classes and voice acting. And I found out Maria Bamford took a stand-up class, and I found out who taught it, and I talked them into letting me in, even though it was a level 2 class. And it's really been amazing, actually. Shout out to Judith Shelton. It's really been amazing because she asked, like, what do you want? I was like, I want my joke writing to be the next level. I'm really good at being a rascal. I'm really good at being this kind of person. There's 2 things that I'm bad at. I'm bad at levels. I tend to hit every audience with like 11. I turn my amp up to 11 because that's how I feel. But I have to work on giving them levels because there's a lot of jokes of mine that don't sound very intelligent until she made me do a deadpan exercise, and I had to do all of my material deadpan. I was just like trying to do it, and then all of a sudden I go, and then I would just smile creepily into the camera and then like pull it back. But you got to be adaptive in comedy. And I love shows that force you to be adaptive. There's a show out of Phoenix, Arizona called This Week Sucks Tonight. And I've watched headliners watch that show and be like, why did I agree to do this shit? Because it's sort of Roast Battle meets the Benson Interruption meets a news show. And so you have to be good. They'll ask you, what's your favorite type of porn, and put it on behind you while you're performing. Like, they're crazy, right? So so you got to be adaptable, but I like that. I like spontaneity. I like the weird things that can happen in these shows that are kind of like Roast Battle. I like something that's very organic and insane that the audience is only going to get once. I really like that. And because I've been that audience member and walked away from shows going, I'm never going to see that again. And that's why live comedy is better than a special, because you're never going to see what you just saw again. That was a moment, and you had to be in it. You couldn't record it. It's not like a concert with music where you spend half the time with your phone in the air now. It's like you got to really pay attention to what's happening or you'll miss the moment. And for a person who struggles with focusing, that's important. And the Zoom shows, by the time... So I was supposed to go on a tour through the South, then the East, then come back, do all of the Pacific Northwest, and then go to Europe. That was going to be my 2020. I was not going to be home at all. I had bought the tickets. Some of them were not refundable. Like some of it, there was a lot on the plate. And what I didn't realize is I was exhausted. Because I also was balancing day jobs because LA is super expensive. And again, I can't convince clubs that I'm a solid feature. No one wants to bring a sober old woman who has a boyfriend on a road. You know what I mean? There's just hi, I'm a wet blanket. You want to bring a wet blanket on the road? I'll make sure that you don't get scurvy. No one wants that. They want to take a dude they can high five and take to the strip club. What they don't know is I will go, but I will talk to all the strippers all night. So I really needed to rest. Needed to rest. And so my first couple of weeks, I think you were the first show you put me on a Zoom show. I think you guys were the first one. And what I really quickly realized is, I don't like commuting. It takes 30 minutes to an hour and a half to get fucking anywhere in LA. And so, no, I love it. I can just roll out of bed and I can just do my set. And 2, you can play with the medium itself. And so you can move around. I've been opening with, I did a live comedy show, and why are old men always trying to close talk you? This guy came up to me and he was like, hey, can I talk in your mouth? Can I talk in your mouth, please? And what I do, if you're listening to this audio format, what I do is I just put my mouth on the camera, basically. And so you can play with it. You can use little props. You can use your tiny hands. You can grab your vibrator and pretend it's a microphone. You can do anything at home. And because it's Zoom, there's a freedom to it because it kind of doesn't matter. There's no agents or managers showing up to Zoom shows, although if they are, holler at me. But like for the most part, it's comedy for the sake of comedy, for the enjoyment of comedy, for the people who need to laugh. It's a very pure form of comedy. It's just different. And comedians, like addicts, recovering addicts, do not care for change. And so it's just different. I would say allow it. Have fun with it. You know, my boyfriend and I did a show where we both made fun of each other, and at one point he just walked into the background of my shot with his headphones on, talking shit to me. You know, and people like freaked out. I've put on a dinosaur suit and run around in the background of my roommate sets. You know, like. You know, you can really have fun and be silly and be absurd and still try material. I've built a lot of new bits in quarantine that are not just about quarantine.
Yeah.
You know, like
that's incredible.
Yeah, that's great. And like, so I think it's really great because again, I'm getting on in years and I don't want to be driving around the city all night anymore. You know, I don't have that. In the first year, everything's so frantic. No matter what age you are, you're just like, oh, I just got to get another set. I love it. Oh, my God, I love it. I love being around comedians. And then the pink cloud fades. And then you're like, I'm tired. Get off the stage. That joke never works. Like, you just want to go home. And I remember, like, going home a couple of times and calling my homeboy in the program. And I'd be like, it's 11:15. He goes, why are you calling me at 11:15? I said, I just did all my sets and I'm home early. And he'd be like, what are you going to do? I'm like, I'm going to do a face mask and I'm going to watch an episode of The West Wing and it's going to be great. It's going to be like the old times when I didn't have to be awake all hours, you know, because you're also expected to wake up early because that's when the New York market starts. So you got to wake up early. You got to tweet. You got to do this. You got to be ready to answer all this because those manager emails will come in and they'll be like, you know, like, hey, can you audition for this thing? It needs to be in by yesterday. You know, like, fuck off with that. Like, I'm a comedian in LA. I don't wake up until 2:00 your time, bruh. So like, it's been actually, it's tragic that so many people are dying. I've had 2 friends get COVID. One of them got so sick she had to have physical therapy to learn how to walk again. Oh, and another one didn't know she had it and did a film shoot. And then the test came back after she had another test that was negative. A test came back positive. And like, you know, and she was super sick, but she wasn't like, I think I really have corona. Like, so, you know, it's like being safe right now and remembering that this is a terrible time. And while as comedians, you know, a lot of comedians will be like, I'm going to take my ball and go home. And it's like, what a missed opportunity to adapt and learn how to perform in awkward situations, because you know what? Film shoots, mad awkward. AGT auditions, the most awkward thing in the world. You know, it's like, I'd rather have a gynecological exam than in front of those producers than actually do my jokes. Like, you know, there's a lot of really awkward scenarios that you can work through those nerves on Zoom because it is a little adrenaline boost at first. You're like, I've never done this before. And it does, it's just something new. And like, it's not really about you. You know, the pandemic didn't happen to you. It didn't happen to your career. It didn't happen to, you know, your hot 5 new minutes or the album you wanted to record or the tours that you had booked and the plane tickets that you bought. The pandemic happened to all of us. And you can sit around being sad about it, or you can help another person and maybe take some time to help yourself, whether that's taking a break from comedy, reading books, you know, taking classes that you didn't have the time to take before, like I'm doing, you know, going to more 12-step meetings, like, you know, doing whatever it is, doing more yoga, doing whatever it is that brings you joy outside of comedy, because comedian is not an identity. Comedian is a job. It is a job. And being a human being is your identity. That's something completely separate. And if you merge them, like I've done, like every comedian has done at any point, if you merge your success or failure as a comedian into your self-worth and into your identity, then you're going to end up in a very dark place. And so you gotta let it breathe, let it go. Yeah, you're gonna bomb sometimes on Zoom. It's gonna be painful because you can see yourself bombing. Woo! Yeah. Woo! And not every show is as well run as your show. Some shows I won't do anymore because they suck a butt. And like, it's like you got, first off, get a here's the tip. If you're a Zoom producer, either do it all, just a Zoom show. Don't Facebook Live that shit. No one's going to watch it. Do it on Twitch. That's where all the comics are going. Port it onto YouTube. Do it on Instagram, which is kind of weird because you can't hear the audience. You can just see their little hearts and shit. For some reason, any show that's main selling point is, on the Zoom, it's going to just be comics. So everybody's got to just be comics right now. And then it's only going to go to Facebook Live. For some reason, that is an indicator. Maybe not worth your time.
Okay, because we go to Facebook Live. But we
but you're also... Twitch. Listen, I started by saying that you are one of the best shows for a reason. Your tech is on point. You're always fabulous. You guys are so structured. I always forget because there's a little delay. It's like, okay, there's a delay. It's like, okay, now I'm on. You guys really do it. And I so appreciate that because I assume people are still watching and people are still really into it. And I'm so grateful for you putting that together in such an organized and beautiful fashion. Does that make sense?
You. Yes. Well, yeah. I am hyper organized. We have the best tech genius in the world. So
really do.
Yes.
Really do. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. And you guys are patient and honest and cool. And, it's every time I've done your show, I've been nothing but thrilled with the results. I'm serious. I'm not blowing smoke up your skirt. I swear to you, you guys are killing it. And I you know what? Edit that out when I was like, some shows suck. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. In life, some shows suck.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just an opportunity to practice when it's okay to say no. Yeah. Because comedians think that if you don't say yes to everything, then you'll get nothing.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to say no. Sometimes you have to say, my uterus is falling out and I have cramps in my butthole. No, I don't want to drive to Tulare for $100. No. But we struggle with that. And so it is important to practice. Like if you're on a Zoom show that you don't like, you never have to do that Zoom show again.
Yeah.
And even mid-call, you could say if it's really a bad experience, it could be like, I'm not comfortable with the show. I think I'm going to leave. And that's it. That's all it is. It's like you don't have to, there's nothing we're signed on for permanently. We choose this life. We choose that. We could choose to be a banker. We could choose to, that's the one thing my boyfriend, I'll say this, I'm sorry, I'm really rambling. My boyfriend is, he's always upset about the uncertainty of our careers. And nothing is more uncertain than being a comedian in 2020. Whatever your plans were, I hope when we get out of this, that there's a hard industry reset. Because the industry isn't a meritocracy. It's not fair, and it can be exclusionary. And I'm not saying that like, oh, poor me. What I'm saying is there's some obstacles that, by the way, you put those obstacles in front of me, motherfucker, I'm going to come back funnier than you ever expected. And you're going to be a little sad you slept on Miss Anna Valenzuela. You know what I mean? Like, like that's my attitude of like, oh, try to get in my way. Right. But like, I hope that there's a hard comedy reset and that the priorities shift and change a little bit in the industry. So more people like you, more people like me, more people that we know and love that are kind of, they're doing good, but they haven't quite broken through to have those opportunities to break through. And that's, part of the advantage of doing the Zoom shows. Plus no commuting. You can have no pants on. No one knows on this call if I have pants on.
That's true.
No one.
We don't.
Yeah, what a delight. What a delight. You know, like it's a lot of fun. So like I would just say, you know, get over yourself and try something new. And if you hate it, you never have to do it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
All right. We are going to start wrapping up. This has been so much fun. We should do this again.
We could just talk for hours. We should just brunch. You know, we should just brunch.
That's true. We should. We should just have our own private Zoom call and catch up. I am going to open it up for Q&A, but I don't know if anybody
if they're still here.
Is still here because we
started late because I'm a spaz and Tech was spaz. And then are you here? Are you here? Are you here, people? If you're not here.
Yeah, if you're not here, then, you know.
Does Richard have a question?
Richard, our producer, Richard? Do
Yeah.
you have a question? I don't know.
I feel like I failed you guys. I'm sorry. Is anybody watching? Come on, Twitch.
I don't know. Let's see. Oh, and I get messages all over the place, and I don't watch them because I'm listening to you. Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, you know what? You can come back and we just have a Q&A time.
Yeah, I'd be happy, and I will show up 25 minutes early. I promise. and the tech will be perfect. Yeah. And I'm so sorry again, and I'm just so grateful to be here. And seriously, I will anytime come back for Q&A. Anytime. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything I do want to be mindful of time, but
no, I'm fine.
I saw something that said you were working on an album. Is this?
Yeah, well, you know, producer, hello. I'm waiting for the producer to get me back to track. I have a EP that I'll be releasing. It's literally a set I did in February.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's like the last time those jokes can really be told without the specter of a pandemic. So those jokes will be released hopefully soon. It's about 13 minutes long. I'm going to send it to Sirius. So I'll put it on all the streaming resources. So let's manifest that my producer, who's well out of my price range and hooking me up, kind of gets it done soon. So there's that. And then I also have a podcast called 12 Questions, and we want to see it grow and flourish and be the best. So give it a listen. It's two comedians, myself and Dave Yates. And Dave Yates is he's a road dog from the Midwest, man. And you've got my positive, dabbing every 20 seconds energy, and then you have his salty Rust Belt energy, and we interview people about their real lives, and you don't have to be sober to listen, you don't have to be sober to be on it, so it's just asking interesting questions from this life philosophy that we live in. So that's what's going on there, and that's it.
Okay. All right. Well, as we wrap up, I have a closing question for you.
Ooh.
One word to describe your future. Not your past, your future. Producer, pay attention.
Ooh, I feel like it's going to be a really good word. Okay, my one word would be abundance. Yeah, abundance. Not scarcity, but abundance. Yeah.
Starts with A, just like anxiety.
Yes, and Anna. Ha-ha.
And Anna. Yes. Well, that is a wrap on Comedy Wham Live with Anna Valenzuela. We hope you have enjoyed learning about the beautiful Anna with her tiny hands, which she didn't bring out.
Oh, no, they're here. They're here. They're here. Yay. I got my tiny hands, guys. I got my tiny hands.
Yay.
Yay, tiny hands, tiny feet.
We hope you've enjoyed learning about how Anna got to be the comedic genius that you heard today. Tell us where we can find you on social media, and let us know about any upcoming things or projects that you want to promote.
Well, I just let you know about the project. You can find me at Anna V is Fun, as pictured here. Look at how beautiful that is. At Anna V is Fun on Twitter and Instagram and all the things. TikTok, I'll eventually get back on that, but it's like heroin. You got to be careful. So you can find me on all the things. You can find me at annavalenzuela.com and Facebook. And yeah, check me out, and I'd be happy to, gosh, I've got to play some parties over Zoom, which was really fun. Cool. So just check me out for bookings and hangs and listen to the podcast and support Valerie Lopez, everybody. She's a goddamn national treasure and deserves your support.
That's so sweet. You're so sweet. Look for the article about Anna and the podcast episode to be released on comedywham.com. And, of course, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. Listen to past interviews on iTunes and review us while you're at it if you're listening to the podcast episodes. A huge thank you to Richard Goodwin for recording and making the technology possible to do this. And thank you to Matt Farley of Moturn Media for the music that you heard up top. This has been Comedy Wham Live online with Anna Valenzuela. I'm Valerie, and that's been funny. Thank you, Anna.
Yay, thank you, Valerie. We did it. We did it. Oh. I love it. Okay, goodbye. Goodbye. Thank you, Richard. I hope you're not neglecting children or cats either. I'm so sorry. I talk so much. All right.